I started playing music when I was in the third grade. Excuse me. I started on violin, and someone stole my violin after, I guess it was near the end of the first year. And it was a real crummy violin. I think it cost all like, I don't know, $5 or something back then. And my mother was furious with me. So that was the end of my career as a violinist, which I don't regret. Then when I was 12, after my grandfather had died, I was rooting around in his attic and I found his banjo. He had been in a band with my great uncle in the 30s or 20s. He had an old Bacon Professional. It was built in 1898 and it was in pieces for some reason. The body was disconnected from the neck, but they're easy to put together. So a friend of mine helped me put it together and we strung it up, and I played Jimmy Brown, the newsboy of the town. It has 2 chords, C and G7. It's real easy to play on a banjo, just strumming. And then I inherited a Stella plywood guitar. So it's Sears back then, these plywood sunburst guitars. And he did pay $5 for that guitar, and I got it from him because he lost interest in it. I started playing that with a friend of mine, and then I upgraded to a Harmony archtop guitar. And I took my first guitar lessons at the YWCA in Annapolis, Maryland on State Circle with a guy named John Gottlieb. He taught group lessons, and he taught us how to play Railroad Bill. Railroad Bill was like... So he taught us how to finger pick, which was really cool. Anyway, I guess my next major event was studying classical guitar with a guy named Andy Merrill who lived in Annapolis. And he had studied with a guy named Aaron Shearer, who is like the godfather of classical guitar in America. He had the first college level guitar program in America. As astounding as that sounds, it was in the late 50s. So I studied with Andy off and on for about 4 years, and got interested in classical music. My teacher, Andy Merrill, he's real big into flamenco, but he also liked bossa nova, which was big at the time. One of the ones he taught me was one-note samba. When I first started, I played folk music, and my main influences were I had a couple of records that I got from my brother. Had Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Bob Dylan's first two albums, and an album by a guy named Eric von Schmidt and Ralph Kahn. They're Boston guys, and I just listened to those over and over and over and learned how to play a lot of those songs. And then when I got a little older, I was really influenced a lot by a lot of the early rock and roll guitar players like Chuck Berry, and found out that his influences were like Charlie Christian, who was Benny Goodman's guitar player in a short period of time in the 30s, and T-Bone Walker. And I listened a lot to country blues early on, like Mississippi John Hurt and Reverend Gary Davis. There was a guy that lived near us in Fairfax County named John Jackson, who was a Piedmont blues guitarist. But then when I got into listening to urban blues, I listened to Muddy Waters, Freddie King, B.B. King, T-Bone Walker. Those guys were very influential on me. And then a little later on, I discovered I bought a couple of my first jazz albums by Wes Montgomery and a guy named Joe Pass. And I had a turntable that had a slow speed of 16. And so I put my 33 record on there and slow it down to 16. And it would make the song go down one octave, and it would be half speed. So for any of the faster licks, I could play them over and over again and learn them off the records. So I learned some Wes Montgomery stuff by ear. This is called the Road Song. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I was 18, after I graduated from high school, I joined a rock band in Washington, D.C., and we played in bars. And we became pretty popular after a couple of years at it. And I was making more money than I knew what to do with it. It was unbelievable. Back then, there was a bar on every corner down in Georgetown. And we worked, if we wanted to, we could work 7 nights a week. And there were periods where we worked 8 gigs a week. We'd do like a Saturday matinee. And a lot of them were in different places, so we had to lug our gear around. Anyway, I did that up through 1975. I took a brief respite from music and got a day job as a printer. And that lasted a couple of years. And then I got back into playing in the bar band scene. And shortly after that, I got interested in the recording arts and sciences, and I got a a gig as an assistant engineer, and I went to some training at one of the bigger studios in Washington called Omega, and got a couple of certificates there in engineering. And I became real interested in the concept of doing live recording out of my van. I had a 4-track Crown tape recorder that was like this wide, this deep, and like almost 4 feet tall. Had knobs on it like this, and it had 4 gigantic VU meters, and it took 1/4-inch tape, and you could do multi-track recording on it, 4 tracks. Eventually, it became a 16-track truck, and it was in an old paper truck that had a 24-foot box on it. By the time we finished it, 16-track technology was obsolete. So we got a 24-track machine, and we stayed with the same console. And that business did pretty well. We became very popular with gospel groups on location. The word spread, that we were reliable in that community. And so we travel up and down the East Coast almost every weekend doing a gospel album. We also built a live studio room that I could back the truck up to, and we recorded local DC artists in there. We had a recording truck when somebody needed something recorded at the White House or the Smithsonian or Constitution Hall, Kennedy Center. They'd call us oftentimes. There was another truck in Baltimore that got a lot of those gigs, and there was one in Pennsylvania, but a lot of times NPR used us a lot. So that's how we got those high-profile gigs. We recorded everybody in the world, everybody you could think of. And one of my biggest accomplishments is I had a pretty long collaboration with a guitarist named Danny Gatton, who is an iconic guitar player, virtuoso, and to this day, even today, I got some emails about Danny, from his fans, showing me a clip of him playing at a Holiday Inn in Vienna, Virginia, back in the 70s, late 70s. Around 1997, I sold it all. And shortly thereafter, the bottom kind of fell out of that industry. It's like when people started using computers. And also I found that after I do like 10 hours of recording music, the last thing I'd want to do would be to play or listen to music. So I got back into playing music in 97, and I got back into studying classical, and I got more interested in jazz. My wife and I moved up here to Vermont. In 92, I came kicking and screaming. I didn't want to move up here for anything, but now I really love it. But I was still working on the road, until about 97 when I sold the business. And so then I started, around 2000, I started doing local gigs. And in 2001, I started teaching here at Hanover Strings. So I've been here for 20 years now, a little over 20 years. Yeah, I never really wanted to do anything else. And I've managed to do it for my whole life. Like I said, I spent about 2 years as in a print shop doing prep work, camera, plate making, and stripping, what they call stripping. I was a stripper. Yeah, so the rest of my life I've been a musician, and like I said, for the last 20 years I've been just teaching and doing gigs. So that's my story.